NATO leaders have ended 2 days of talks in Brussels and made a start on drafting the West's first integrated defence strategy since the Cold War. Initial steps prompted by the war in Ukraine include agreement on protecting vital undersea cables and pipelines. Several NATO members have also pledged more military assistance for Ukraine. But differences remain over increasing overall defence spending and expanding the alliance.
More troops on high alert, better logistics, new capabilities. For the first time since the Cold War, NATO is drawing up new defense plans to address the threat posed by Russia. But to carry them out, allies have to increase their defense spending. That is Jens Stoltenberg's message in Brussels. He urged NATO countries to go beyond the target of 2% of GDP agreed 10 years ago.
I think more and more allies also agree to the fact that 2% should not be some kind of ceiling, but a minimum, because they realize that there is an urgent need to increase defense spending.
The new spending goal is still being discussed, as well as the details of the defense plans. And as yet, there is no breakthrough on Sweden. The Swedish defense minister joined the meeting in Brussels, but his country's bid to join NATO is still being blocked by Hungary and especially Turkey, despite efforts by the US and others to pressure Ankara to drop its objections.
We welcome all efforts that can assure that we can become a full-fledged member of the alliance by the Vilnius summit. And I think the sense of urgency of Sweden getting a full-fledged membership is much higher, also due to the work that's being undertaken inside NATO with strengthening NATO's regional plans.
During their meeting, NATO defense ministers approved a new body to upgrade ties with Kyiv, the Ukraine NATO Council. Several allies also pledged to further increase their military assistance, among them Germany, which had already announced a €2.7 billion aid package. In addition to that, we have now decided that we will immediately deliver another 64 guided missiles for the Patriot systems, a very important sign to support the successful efforts of the Ukrainian armed forces to ensure air defense, especially now in this special phase. Next big issue on the alliance's calendar is the much-anticipated summit of NATO leaders in Lithuania in mid-July.
NATO Secretary-General Jens Stoltenberg says members have agreed to move Ukraine closer to the military alliance. He has expressed confidence that there will be a consensus on this issue at next month's NATO summit in Vilnius. Stoltenberg said a NATO-Ukraine Council will be set up where Kyiv will be represented as an equal partner. He made the comments on the final day of a NATO defence ministers' meeting in Brussels.
We are also working to establish a new NATO-Ukraine Council, where Ukraine will be equal to NATO allies and consult and decide on security issues of mutual concern. Our ambition is to have the first meeting of the new council in Vilnius with President Zelensky. We all agree that Ukraine has already moved closer to NATO over the past decade.
Let's get more insight from DW correspondent Terry Schultz in Brussels. Terry, so many weighty outcomes on the table now. What stood out to you as the most significant outcome of the meeting?
Well, obviously for Ukraine, what you just heard there from Secretary General Stoltenberg is very important. They had hoped to be offered membership. That's very unlikely, but there will be other moves taken to make Ukraine feel more secure in a future within this alliance. But in addition to that, there are some practical things that happened here that are also very important for Kyiv. And one of those is that allies agreed to step up training of pilots for F-16s. Now, no one is certain to give fighter aircraft to Ukraine at this point. They're talking more about possibly after the war. You never know. That's changed many times. But many countries came forward and said, we'd like to train these pilots, so they'll be ready if and when that happens. It's what they call a bird coalition, formulating around getting Ukrainians trained and eventually getting them these aircraft. So that was another big outcome of the summit. And finally, just for NATO watchers, it appears to be confirmed now that NATO Secretary General Jens Stoltenberg will be staying on in his position another year. The alliance has not coalesced around another candidate, and while the Secretary General himself says he is not seeking an extension, it appears he'll be asked to take one.
You put the question personally to him, Terry. How did discussions about Sweden's NATO membership unfold?
I did, and that's in part because they were discussing regional plans, how the alliance is going to sort of calculate what it does if a certain part of the alliance comes under attack. And of course, Sweden sits right in the middle of other NATO allies, Finland and Norway, up there with Denmark and the Baltics. So there's a bit of a hole there if Sweden doesn't get NATO membership. And of course, these are questions we've been asking over and over and over for a year now. And it doesn't appear that they got any sort of sign from Turkey that President Erdogan is willing to wave Sweden through, to ask his parliament to approve Sweden. And we also heard from the Swedish defense minister that he wasn't given any such assurances. But something else did happen during this meeting, and that is that the Turkish parliament extended its sitting period by another month. It would have been out of session now until October, of course, passing the Vilnius summit in July. Now it will actually stay in session another month and could approve Swedish membership if President Erdogan sends it there to lawmakers.
Terry, we all know that more defence means more spending. Where are the discussions now on new spending commitments?
Well, this discussion about 2%, that allies need to spend 2% of their GDP on their militaries in order to be ready for whatever NATO may be asked to do. That pledge is over next year. That was in 2024. So they've got to come up with some other language to try to commit governments to spend enough on their militaries to be prepared for possible crises. So there's been a lot of discussion about whether that can stay at 2%. There are a lot of countries that would like it to be higher. The Baltic states are already spending, 3% and would like there to be a commitment from other countries to do that. That's not going to happen. There are still plenty of them not even spending 2%. So what they hope to do at this Vilnius summit is strengthen the language and say that you need to spend at least 2%. No longer just reach 2%, but go above it. But they're not going to be able to hold them to that with any sort of sanctions, as it seems now.
Finally, Terry, the meeting was largely focused, as you say, on planning for the Vilnius summit next month. Ukraine would like to be invited to join there. Will that happen?
Secretary General Stoltenberg said in very clear terms at his press conference just a bit ago that there will not be an invitation to Ukraine to join. So that must have, struck like a knife in Ukrainian hearts, because they had really hoped that with everything they've done, the way they feel they're defending Europe themselves, that they would be offered to join. But what Secretary General Stoltenberg explained is that they will all work on how to get Ukraine more and more close to the alliance, to get it ready for eventual membership. He said everyone agrees on that, but there won't be a timeline.
A big day in Brussels. DW correspondent Terry Schultz, thank you.